Hello and welcome to Lost Love Mystery, where we explore the twists and turns of love, the pain of betrayal, and the mysteries that lie hidden in the heart. I pushed my chair back slightly, feeling the weight of all the eyes at the table shifting toward me. The evening had started like any other family dinner. Polite small talk, the clinking of cutlery, and the occasional burst of laughter. It was the kind of gathering where everyone was expected to play their part. The women cooked, the men talked about their jobs, and I tried to fit in. But then my wife, Neha, decided to turn me into the night's entertainment. It began with a seemingly harmless jab. You should have seen him last week trying to put up a simple shelf. It was like watching a toddler wrestle with a Rubik's Cube, she said, giggling as she scooped more food onto her plate. I chuckled, playing along, thinking it was just her usual teasing. No harm in that, right? A small joke at my expense, something couples do. But then she kept going. And let's not even talk about how he handles stress. One time, he had to call my dad to change a tire, she added, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear. Her mother was the first to laugh. Then her brother. Then the rest of them joined in, the sound bouncing off the walls like a chorus of mockery. I forced a smile, trying to remind myself that I might be overthinking it. Maybe she wasn't trying to embarrass me on purpose. Maybe it was all in good fun. But she wasn't done. Neha leaned in, her smirk widening. Oh, come on. We all know he's not exactly a real man. Silence. A thick, suffocating silence. The words landed heavier than I expected. Not because I hadn't heard similar things before, but because of the way she said it. So casually, so confidently, as if it were an undeniable fact. For a moment, I glanced at her, hoping for a sign that she'd gone too far, that she'd see the hurt she'd just inflicted. But she wasn't even looking at me. To her, this was just another joke. To her family, it was just another moment of shared laughter at my expense. And then her brother, Raj, chimed in, grinning like he'd been waiting for the perfect moment. Man, I don't know how you got married. You're lucky my sister doesn't have higher standards. More laughter, more smirks. I clenched my fists under the table, my nails digging into my palms. I could feel my ears burning, my heartbeat picking up speed. A real man. I could have laughed it off, could have played along, could have taken the hit like I always did. But something about the way she said it, the ease, the confidence, the way she knew everyone would just agree, made something inside me snap. Not in the explosive, dramatic way people expect when someone is insulted like that. No, this was something colder, sharper. I looked around the table at all of them, still smirking, still entertained at my expense. And then I looked at her. She wasn't embarrassed. She wasn't apologetic. She wasn't even looking at me. Because to her, this was normal. I swallowed back every instinct to argue, to defend myself, to demand some kind of respect. Because I knew something she didn't. This was the last time she would ever get to humiliate me like this. The car ride home was suffocating. Neha was on her phone, scrolling like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't just stripped me of every ounce of dignity in front of her entire family. The only sound in the car was the occasional vibration of a notification, the dull hum of the road beneath the tires. I kept my hands on the wheel, gripping a little too tight, my knuckles turning white. I could feel the weight of the words she had thrown at me still pressing down. Not a real man. I wanted to say something. I wanted to ask her what the hell that even meant. I wanted to know if she had any idea how it felt to sit there, completely exposed, while the people she called family laughed at me like I was some joke she regretted marrying. But I didn't say a word. She didn't either. That silence, that complete indifference from her, spoke louder than anything else. It told me everything I needed to know. When we pulled into the driveway, she finally looked up from her phone. Are you seriously mad about that? She asked, her voice laced with annoyance, as if I was the problem here. I let out a slow breath through my nose, forcing myself to stay calm. Did you even hear yourself tonight? She rolled her eyes. Oh my God, you're so sensitive. It was just a joke. A joke. I let the words settle between us, heavy, like they carried a different meaning for each of us. A joke, I repeated, my voice eerily steady. So when you called me not a real man, that was just comedy? You weren't actually saying what you think? She sighed dramatically, like this conversation was exhausting her. You take everything so seriously. My family jokes like that all the time. It's not a big deal. Not a big deal. I nodded slowly, more to myself than to her, because now I understood. This wasn't just about one dinner. This wasn't just a careless slip of the tongue. This was how she saw me. This was how she had always seen me. And she wasn't sorry. She didn't even feel bad. I stepped out of the car without another word, shutting the door behind me. She stayed behind for a moment, probably waiting for me to get over it like I always did. But I wasn't getting over this. Not this time. I walked into the house without waiting for her. The front door clicked shut behind me, sealing in the quiet. She was still in the car, probably scrolling through her phone, waiting for me to get over it. But I wasn't going to. I stood in the dimly lit hallway for a moment, looking around the home we had built together. Or at least the home I thought we had built together. Everything felt different now. The pictures on the walls, the furniture we picked out, even the scent of her perfume lingering in the air. It all felt foreign, like I was standing in a life that didn't belong to me anymore. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid to admit it. I didn't slam doors. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't throw accusations at her like I might have in the past. I simply stopped trying. The shift was subtle at first. The old me would have tried to make things right. I would have apologized for overreacting. I would have convinced myself that maybe I was being too sensitive, that maybe Neha didn't mean what she said the way it sounded. But that night, I did something different. I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sound of Neha typing on her phone, probably texting her friends about how ridiculous I was being, how I couldn't take a joke. I didn't care. The anger I expected to feel wasn't there. What replaced it was something far more powerful: clarity. This wasn't just about one dinner. This was about every little moment that had chipped away at me over the years. Every eye roll, every sigh of impatience when I struggled with something, every time she dismissed me in front of others. And now, I saw it for what it was. Neha didn't respect me. Maybe she never had. The next morning, I woke up before her. Usually, I'd wait for her to stir, maybe make her coffee, try to start the day off on a good note. Not today. I got up, took a long shower, and left without a word. No note, no explanation. She didn't call to ask where I was. She probably assumed I'd be back like always, that I'd cool off and things would return to normal. She had no idea things had already changed. I went to the gym for the first time in months. Not for her. Not to prove anything to anyone. Just for me. I pushed myself harder than I had in a long time. Every rep, every bead of sweat, felt like I was shedding a layer of who I used to be. The man who always tried to please, who always backed down, who always let himself be the punchline. By the time I left, my body ached, but my mind had never felt clearer. When I walked back into the house that evening, Neha barely looked up from her phone. "Where were you?" she asked casually. I shrugged, kicking off my shoes. "Out." Her eyes flicked up to me, studying my face for a second. She wasn't used to that answer. I usually told her exactly what I was doing, exactly where I had been. This time, I didn't give her that satisfaction. She scoffed, flipping through the TV channels. "You're being weird," she muttered. I said nothing. Let her sit in that discomfort. Days passed, then a week. I wasn't angry. I wasn't ignoring her. I was just different. I didn't initiate conversations. If she wanted to talk, she could. I didn't make plans for us. If she wanted to spend time together, she could make the effort. I stopped waiting for her approval, for her affection, for her acknowledgement, and something strange happened. For the first time since we'd been together, she started noticing me. At first, it was small things. She'd glance at me when she thought I wasn't looking. She started asking what time I'd be home, something she never used to care about. "You've been out a lot lately," she remarked one evening, watching me pull on my jacket. "Just keeping busy," I replied simply. She frowned. "Doing what?" I smiled. "Does it matter?" The look on her face told me everything. She was confused. She was intrigued. For years, she had been the one in control, the one who dictated how things went, the one who had the upper hand. Now, she wasn't so sure anymore, and that bothered her more than anything. It started with passive-aggressive remarks. Wow, you actually have plans. That's new. You've been working out a lot lately. Trying to impress someone? She was testing me, waiting for me to react, to snap, to fight, to prove I still cared enough to argue with her. But I didn't. I just let her words hang in the air. And that silence, that indifference, that got to her more than any fight ever could. Then one night, she tried a different approach. We were sitting on opposite ends of the couch, the TV playing in the background. She shifted closer, rested her hand on my arm. The first time in weeks she had touched me. I feel like we've been off lately, she said softly. Don't you think? I looked at her, met her gaze. Had we been off? No. She had just finally started feeling the absence of something I had felt missing for a long time. I let the silence stretch before I answered. Yeah. She waited, expecting me to say more, expecting me to fix things. But I didn't. And in that moment, I saw it, the realization in her eyes. She finally understood. I wasn't the one who had something to prove anymore. Neha was watching me now. I could feel her eyes on me, studying, waiting for something. At first, it was confusion, then irritation, then something else. Fear. Not the fear of losing me. No, she wasn't the sentimental type. It was the fear of losing control. For years, she had dictated the rhythm of our relationship. She decided when I was worthy of affection, when I was worth listening to, when I was worth respecting. Now, for the first time, she had no say in the matter. And she hated it. Then came the family dinner. The same scene, the same people. Except this time, I was different. She must have assumed enough time had passed, that I'd softened, that I'd fallen back into old patterns. She laughed at some inside joke with her brother, casually touching my arm, trying to include me. I let her hand rest there, but gave her nothing in return. The same family members who had mocked me weeks ago noticed the shift. You've been quiet tonight, her mother observed. I gave a polite smile, taking a sip of my drink. Nothing much to say. Neha forced a laugh. He's been so serious lately. She looked at me, waiting for me to joke back, to reassure her that everything was fine. But everything wasn't fine, and I wasn't going to pretend otherwise. Then, Raj smirked. The same damn smirk. You still struggling to be a real man? Or did you finally figure it out? The old me would have laughed it off, tried to prove myself, made some effort to win their approval. The new me? I just looked at him. I didn't smirk. I didn't frown. I just held his gaze long enough for him to realize I wasn't playing anymore. His smirk faded. And that was it. I didn't need to argue. I didn't need to fight for respect that was never going to be given. My silence was my response. And this time, they felt it. The drive home was different. Neha wasn't scrolling through her phone, wasn't pretending everything was normal. She just stared straight ahead, fingers drumming lightly against her thigh. I could feel the tension in the air, thick and heavy, but I didn't break the silence. Let her sit in it. When we pulled into the driveway, she finally spoke. What the hell was that? I turned to face her, meeting her eyes for the first time that night. What was what? She scoffed, crossing her arms. Oh, don't do that. You know exactly what I'm talking about. You sat there all night acting like a stranger, like you weren't even part of the conversation. I tilted my head slightly. Was I supposed to be? Her jaw tightened. Are you seriously still mad about that stupid joke? That was weeks ago. I let out a slow breath. There it was again. She still didn't get it. This isn't about the joke, I said, my voice calm. It's about the fact that I finally saw things for what they are. She let out a humorless laugh. Oh, please, enlighten me. I didn't react. I wasn't here to argue. I wasn't here to make her understand. That ship had sailed. I spent years trying, I said simply, trying to be good enough for you, trying to prove myself, trying to fit into whatever version of a real man you and your family think I should be. Her arms dropped to her sides. And now you're done? I nodded. Yeah, I am. For a moment, she didn't say anything. Then she let out a breath, shaking her head. You're being dramatic. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so predictable. You keep telling yourself that, I said as I walked past her, heading for the bedroom. I grabbed a bag from the closet and started throwing clothes into it. She followed me in, her voice rising. "Oh, so what, you're just leaving? Just like that?" I zipped the bag closed. "Yeah, just like that." She let out a bitter laugh. "Right. So what? You think you're punishing me? That I'm going to beg you to stay?" I turned to face her one last time. "No. I think you're going to do exactly what you've always done. Pretend you don't care. Pretend you're better off. And maybe you are." I slung the bag over my shoulder and stepped past her.
"But so am I."
I walked out without looking back. No yelling. No dramatic goodbyes. She wasn't worth that kind of ending. I don't remember exactly how long I drove that night. I wasn't rushing to get anywhere. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't running from anything either. I just drove, windows down, cool air hitting my face as the weight of everything I had carried for years started to lift, little by little. I didn't feel broken. I didn't feel lost. I felt free. I ended up at a small motel just outside of town. It wasn't anything special, but it was mine for the night. I tossed my bag on the floor, sat down on the edge of the bed, and just breathed. No tension. No second-guessing. No one sitting next to me, waiting for me to apologize for something I shouldn't be sorry for. I had been afraid that leaving would feel like failure, that I would regret it, that I'd miss her. I didn't. What I missed was myself. The version of me that wasn't constantly proving, chasing, trying to be something I was never meant to be. The version of me that deserved more. That night, I slept better than I had in years. The next few weeks passed quietly. No explosive texts. No dramatic calls. She didn't beg me to come back, and I didn't expect her to. She had always been too proud for that. But I knew. She felt it. She felt the absence of the man who had spent years bending over backward to make her happy. And I felt the presence of someone I had neglected for too long. Me. I moved into my own place. Nothing big. Nothing fancy. Just mine. I focused on myself. On my work. On the things that actually brought me peace. I didn't jump into a rebound. I didn't rush to fill the space she left behind. Because the truth was, she hadn't left a space. She had only ever occupied the parts of me that doubted my own worth. And now, that doubt was gone. I never spoke to her again. Never needed to. Life moved on, and so did I. But sometimes, I wonder if she ever sits alone in that house, scrolling through her phone, realizing that she had never broken me. She had only set me free.